everybody's attention. We're going to get started. My name is Corey Dunham, and I'm on the board of LA2M, and I'm going to run through this pretty quickly because we have a great speaker, Tarun. All right, Gehani, and he has a lot of info, so we're going to try and get everything in here. But welcome to LA2M, where we have our marketing education. And basically, we meet the second week of every month, pretty much during the school year. We take off the summers, but the second week of every month. We have yearly sponsors, which is our company, which is BDB, Marketing and Web Development. And we also have, I believe it's U of M Credit. Is that correct? U of M Credit Union? And then we also have some meeting sponsors, and one of them is TEDx Detroit. So if you could go to their website, obviously, and sign up for those. And then we also have Bud Gibson here with the EMU Center for Digital Engagement. So if you'd like to talk, yes, please.
So we're here specifically to talk about our digital marketing workshop coming up November 15th. It's going to be a banner year for us. We have as our opening keynote Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist. And you might say, well, gee, you know, you're getting this political guy to come in, but actually he has quite a digital background. He was a social media manager for the Obama campaign. He was director of national campaigns for MoveOn.org. When he came back to Michigan, he became the first ever director of innovation and emerging technology for the city of Detroit and helped develop apps so that they could prioritize what they needed to fix as they came out of bankruptcy. But that's not all we've got. We've also got Google. We've got a number of local companies talking about their marketing experience. We're going to close and giving insights. And then we're going to close out with Jen Heyman, Director of Marketing for Zingerman's, who is going to be leading a panel on the marriage of marketing, data, and branding. Now, I'm not, the order of those varies every time I say it, but it's those three things. It's available for $50 up until October 31st. That gets you breakfast, lunch, and all of our content. So happy to chat with people after the event. Would love to have you there.
Thank you very much, Bud. So I want to thank you again for the meeting sponsors, and that's how we can market for LA2M and get these great speakers in on a regular basis, along with yearly sponsors. So if you guys have want to consider that, we certainly would appreciate that. So I'm going to get started, or have Tarun Gehani get started, of Pure Visibility, and he's going to talk about how do you optimize your website with SEO best practices. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Corey. Thanks, everyone, for having me out and for your time. Have a lot to go through. Some slides I kind of breeze over. Some are more in-depth than others. And I'll be available afterwards if any questions. I can also arrange to send the slide deck to anyone who's interested in it. But we're going to talk about how to increase your website's visibility through SEO. A little bit about myself and why you should listen to me, I guess. My name is Tarun Gehani. I started by building websites in WordPress around 2008. I was in a band, and we wanted to promote our music and book gigs, and so started that way, and then was intrigued with SEO, or how can I get more traffic to my site so we could become more popular or get more events. And so I built a couple websites to test theories, to basically just experiment and see what works. From there, had some friends, other musicians who wanted websites built, and then eventually, a friend's dad who was in business wanted his business site redesigned. And from there, built a small team of freelancers and ran a small consultancy for a number of years, and learned a lot over that time. Now I'm the SEO director at Pure Visibility. We're an agency here in Ann Arbor. We focus on SEO and PPC, Google Ads. And in the span of my 10, 12-year career, I've gotten to work with some really great clients. I've been quoted in, and some of our projects have been featured in some publications. And I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. Ask you all to connect there if that's a platform you use. So enough about me. I'd like to know just a little bit about you all. So if we don't mind, just by show of hands, Are there designers in the room, like whether graphic design or web design? Okay. Any web developers? People who build websites? Great. And then writers?
That's me.
Yeah, great. And then maybe just like general marketers? Cool. And then business owners? All right, so nice mix, and then I guess for anyone who didn't raise your hand, you can just raise your hand out. You don't want to leave anyone out. So I'm going to talk to you, obviously, about SEO, search engine optimization. I compel you to think of it as search experience optimization. It's a term I didn't coin, but I think it's relevant and applicable to what we do as marketers. We want to optimize the experience for the users, whether they're on Google.com or some other way. And I probably don't have to convince you why it's important. Obviously, we know from our own behaviors how we search, how we find information on the web, and SEO is vital in that process. There's a good quote from Maz that I like. SEO is one of the few online marketing channels that, when set up correctly, can continue to pay dividends. So we may know that SEO is a gradual process to build up. But it is a great investment of time and resources because it can bring continuous ROI and almost like compounding interest. So before we get into some of the details, we'll go for a broad overview of how search works. Obviously, there's multiple search engines, but Google has a sort of stranglehold on the market, so we'll be talking about Google primarily. And essentially, Google has two main functions. They need to store information and they need to retrieve information. So they have what they call crawlers who go out on the web, crawl the information, store it in its index, and on the other side, when you perform a search on Google.com, you put in a search query or a keyword, and it does some calculations in the back end and then returns a relevant page of results. A couple asterisks here. We used to say crawl pages on the web, and it would return listings of web pages. But over time, this has changed a bit with new technology, with new search behaviors. Google's now more interested in the actual data and how we're moving away. They say instead of strings of keywords, we're more interested in things and these relationships between entities, and we'll get into that momentarily. So briefly, how does Google store information? Well, it has a web crawler, or what they call a spider or Googlebot, which follows links from page to page on the net. It scans the HTML code of that page. It looks at what it has in its index, and if it's been updated, it'll update it, or if it's a new page to them, they'll store it in its index. The index is essentially just trillions of pages, a bunch of information on servers throughout the world. And they have different patents where they calculate different things like content relevance and term frequency, a lot of ways for them to understand, what's the trustworthiness of this site, what's its relative authority, and so on. So then on the other half, how does Google retrieve this information? Well, when you perform a search, it first has to interpret what you've typed in. It applies the algorithm on the back end, number of different factors, scans its index or scans its database, and returns a search results page, which it feels would be relevant to you as a user. So you may be familiar with, there are 200 ranking factors that Google applies in its algorithm. There's actually quite a few more, but these are through tests and experiments what the SEO community has come out with. But in addition to these factors, they also take into account, Google also takes into account where you are physically or geographically, based on your IP address. If you're using a laptop or a phone, if you're logged into Gmail or YouTube, it knows who you are and knows your past search behavior and your past, the content that you've consumed in the past. So all of these influence the ordering of these search results. So essentially every keyword is going to be a unique set of results, and then if I search for something versus someone else, we're going to get slightly different results. But all that being said, this fundamental principle will always remain the same, that Google must always provide the most relevant, the best search results page for their users. At the end of the day, Google's a publicly traded company. They want you to stay on Google.com and click on their ads. They make almost 90% of their revenue from ads. So they always have to make sure that user satisfaction is up to par. Otherwise, we may go to Bing or something. So let's talk a little bit about those ranking factors. Obviously, we're not going to go through all 200, but Google themselves a couple years ago has come out and informed us that there are these three main buckets of influence. We have content, links, and rank brain. These themselves are quite large buckets. There's a lot of different factors in each area, and we'll touch on some of the more important ones today. For like further reading, these are a couple Google algorithm updates worth noting, and I would compel you to research them a little bit. There's a lot of good information on the web. Google Panda, which was basically an update that rewarded more in-depth, long-form content and sort of penalized thin content or content that was created just for ranking's sake. So you really want your content to obviously be valuable for the end user. There's another update called Google Penguin, which people knowing that links are very influential in ranking. A lot of people will just build websites to link to their other websites. And so Google looked at this as a spammy practice and now has ways, parts of the algorithm that demote this. And then finally, Rank Brain and Google Hummingbird is a really good update to look into because I think it's relevant for every one of us here, even more so than the others. It just outlines a lot of these patents that they have and how we can create content that Google likes to consume essentially. We'll talk a little bit about each of these major areas. So the first being content, which broadly speaking, we can break into these four subtopics. We have the length of the content itself, topic coverage, various on-page signals like meta tags, which we'll touch on today, and then user experience signals, how fast the page loads, and different things like this. There's an interesting study that Brian Dean from Backlinko conducted a couple years ago, where him and his team looked at 1 million different keywords and the top 10 results for each one of those keywords. And on average, to rank on the first page, you need a piece of content that's 1,700 words at least. 1 million is a large sample size, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that large, but I think this is still applicable no matter what industry you're in, especially for more competitive terms. That second bucket of influence are links. So backlinks are links from other websites pointing to your site. Essentially, Google's looking at this as a vote of confidence or trust signal. When Sergey and Larry Page first created Google, they basically wanted to mimic a library system. And you think about a book in a library. At the back, it's citing its resources. You go on the computer system and you look up, what shelf, what row is this book, and how are they sort of connected. So that same analogy they wanted to apply to this, to Google, to the web. So links are super important. Topical relevance, man? Yes?
Hi. Question.
Yeah.
So when I put you guys up on the webpage speakers from our LA2M,
Yeah.
if I could put a link to your websites, that would help LA2M. Is that what you're talking about of that?
If LA2M linked to pure visibility, that would help pure visibility.
Okay.
And it would help. So if we get a link from New York Times, that's going to be much more influential than like 100 links from my blog.
Gotcha.
So New York Times is a high domain authority. From LA2M, it's very relevant to what pure visibility does. So that would still be a good signal. But then we may link back to you, and that would help LA2M.
Gotcha.
It's a good question. And then that third major bucket of influence, rank brain. So this is just Google's fancy term for the machine learning aspect of their algorithm. So they put in some inputs and they learn over time how users react and how their experience is to determine if the results that Google's displaying are good for the end user. So there's an interesting experiment by Rand Fishkin at Moz.com a number of years back. He tweeted out to his followers, I think he has a few thousand followers, and he said, hey, do me a favor, search for this term, I forget what it was, maybe SEO software, so that's what his company provides. Search for this term, we're ranking 9 or 10, but click on my result, and then I'll update you. Within like 3 to 4 hours, I don't know how many people actually clicked on his result. Within a few hours, his result bumped up to number 2 or 3 position. So you can't really do this anymore, but this kind of proves that Google's taking into account how we as consumers, how we as searchers interact with the search results page, and they're baking that into the algorithm or into ranking factors. Another quick example about RankBrain is on the left here. This is kind of before RankBrain was developed. You really could only rank for a keyword if you have that exact keyword in your content. This is no longer the case, as you can see on the right. If we search for the gray console developed by Sony, right? We're not saying gaming console, we're not saying PlayStation, but Google understands what we mean and it's returning relevant results. Okay, so we know, generally these buckets of influence. We also know that this is an ever-changing landscape. As search behavior changes, we use our phones, we have lower attention spans, we have more technology at our fingertips. Google has to change as well, or they're going to lose market share, they're going to lose our interest. So you may remember a number of years back, you'd do a search, you'd have a result with 10 blue links. That doesn't exist anymore. We have many different types of SERPs or search engine results pages. We may have site links or star rating reviews, images, videos, maps. So essentially ranking number 1 is not enough. It's not the end-all be-all. We need to create content and mark up our content to get into these other types of features, which we'll briefly go over here. So I'm going to kind of scan through a lot of these pretty quickly, but as I mentioned, yeah, is there a question?
Could you talk back?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So hold on. So this is, what do you mean?
Yeah, so when you perform a search, maybe 7 years ago, you'd get just 10 blue links of web pages. Nowadays, you'll get a result that looks like something on the right, where you'll have more ads, you'll have a map listing, maybe videos, images.
Oh, so those are things that are more important than just pay. Okay.
Yeah, and I would say maybe equally as important. So we don't want to just produce regular content. We don't want to just write a blog post and try to rank. It may rank depending on many variables, what industry, what the competition is like. But for certain queries, for certain keywords, I may, as a user, want something different than an article. I may want an image or a map or something interactive. And Google, as a search system, has evolved over time based on our evolving search behavior. So they have, there's, as a couple examples, like predictive search. You start typing in who is the first, and this shows up before I even finish the sentence or before I hit enter. It's giving me suggestions of, they're trying to autocomplete my sentence. And even so much that they're giving me the answer right there if this was the search I was giving. So I don't even have to go to the results page to get this information. There's some other examples. You probably all are familiar with weather and how that's evolved over the years. You can type in, what's the weather today? You can even type in, will it rain tomorrow? And it knows based on my IP address where I am and will give me the results. There's some others that may or may not be relevant to us. Flights, so you don't need kayak.com anymore or whatever these other Trivago. You can go to Google and search for flights. If you have a flight booked, you can go to Google and look up the flight number and get the information right there in the SERP. Events, this is probably relevant to some of us here. If we have events or we're hosting events, we can use what's called markup to show Google, give them a little bit more information about what our content's about, and it can surface in a result listing like this. And I'll talk more about how to do that in a few minutes. job listings straight on Google.com. A lot of information in medical, where if you search for something like, heart attack symptoms, you'll get this vertical card on the side, which has a lot of really good, useful information, which has sort of its pros and cons. It's good for a user because we don't have to navigate, we don't have to decipher what's a trustworthy resource. We can see all this information right here on the results page. But then the negative to that is if I'm a content producer, or if I'm a health system, I'm losing out on this traffic in a sense. So how do we do this? Well, as this machine grows, we need to feed it new data. There's a consortium between Microsoft and Google and some other players in the industry. They've come together and formed Schema.org, which is this standard way to sort of mark up your code on the back end to give these extra signals to Google. So this is how you can optimize for some of those search features that we were talking about, especially for like local or these events, some of these others that I mentioned. There are some good free tools which I've listed here. Google itself has the structured data testing tool. There's a really good WordPress plugin called Schema app, which I'd recommend downloading if you have a WordPress site. And this is just a quick example of what that can look like. So this is schema markup, a little snippet of the code itself. But then for recipes, these websites that have recipes, these results stand out a lot more than just like a regular blue link. So it's enticing a click through. I'm more likely to click on this result than just something plain. And it can get quite detailed. You can see like star rating reviews that consumers have rated the particular recipe. It says how long it'll take to bake, at what degree, how many calories it is. So you can really add a lot of good, rich data here, and that's what Google is feeding on now. So I mentioned local. This is obviously relevant to most every business, and so I compel you to use Schema local markup on your website itself, as well as claim and optimize your Google My Business profile, which is a free tool. Is there a question?
Yeah, so a lot of I should have said, some of these are available only for brick and mortar businesses. What can you do for businesses that don't have like a physical location?
Yeah, so for Google My Business specifically, it is only for physical brick and mortar. There's even some nuances if you're in like a co-working space or something like this, or if you have a P.O. box. You can't have a Google My Business for a P.O. box. But essentially for businesses that don't have a physical location, if you're a service, maybe like a plumber or some service where you have like a radius of people that you will go to their location and service them, you can use some of these local signals. Beyond that, it's just a matter of on your website itself writing content that's targeting a particular city or region and talking about your services, but then also talking about the location that you serve. So even things indirectly, like here's the best restaurants in Ann Arbor, even if you're not in that industry, it can still help point some signals to Google about your relevance, your local relevance. Yes?
I was thinking, actually, I'm a trainer, and so I go out to my clients' locations, and I can now use Google My Business. And there's a thing you can say that people can't come to my location.
Yes.
But they're now letting you do that, because apparently you couldn't do that.
In the past, you couldn't. Now you can show like a radius of where you will go, and that'll help you show up when people are searching.
Yeah, because that was a problem.
So essentially, Google's goal and our goal are the same, right? We want to create content, get it in front of people when and where they are, in the format they wish to consume. And this is an example I like to use. Maybe hard to read, but for a search term, how to change a furnace filter. And some of you may remember this from before, but and I'm sure we all know how to change a furnace filter. But if you think about the intent behind the search, usually you're not sitting behind a desktop typing this in. You're probably on your phone in the basement by the furnace trying to figure out, do I put this in left or right? So Google understands the intent behind that search, and they know that you don't want an article explaining this. You want a video of someone showing you. So this is just an example to illustrate that we need to think about not only the keywords that we're targeting, but this intent behind the search and what is the user trying to get out. How can we help them go from point A to point B? And then when they're at point B, what new content or new questions will they have that we can then take them to point C? All right, so going into some best practices, we talked about links, rank brain, content. Similarly, we have these buckets of influence we can put into technical elements, on-page elements, quite literally, things on the page of your site, and then off-page, which mainly is links, but there's also other signals like your GMB profile or reviews or testimonials on other sites. So the sweet spot is right in the middle. We need to focus in these three areas and try to move forward and optimize down each path. And I've broken them down a little bit. We have technical content and links. Technical is how can we make our website clean and easy, the code optimized, so that when Google comes, it's not hitting any roadblocks or getting confused or hitting dead ends. How can we help get our pages in its index and displayed how we want them there? And then rendering is how does the site load for different users, different device types, different browsers, operating systems. And so we'll go into each area a little bit. I think I talked about most of these points. So what we always want to do when we're starting a campaign or when we're looking at a site is we want to do a technical review. There are a number of paid tools to use, some of which SEMrush and Screaming Frog we use at our agency and are really so the best tools available. There's also some free tools like Google Search Console, which I'd recommend you all sign up for if you don't have that hooked up to your site yet. It's totally free and it's coming direct from Google, so you can see how your pages are performing, what search terms people are finding you through, and some other really good useful information. But we want to audit the technical aspects of our site. One thing that you can do for free without a tool is just go to Google itself and you type in site:yourwebsite.com, and it'll return a results of approximately how many pages it has in its index. So this is a good way to quickly see, if my site's only 100 pages but there's 1,000 in the index, there's something wrong. There's probably some duplicate content or some issue happening. On the other end, if my site is 100 pages and there's only 10 pages in the index, Google's not crawling these pages and not storing them, so there's something more deeper to investigate. Every website should have an XML sitemap, and this is one of the first places that Googlebot goes to when it comes to scan your site. And it's going to follow these links quite literally to all these pages. So we want to make sure this is accurate, this is up to date. A lot of times we have maybe drafts of blog posts or old blog posts or something that we forgot to delete or we didn't remove from the sitemap. So if we're on WordPress, I'm sure many of us are familiar with Yoast SEO plugin. It makes it really easy to do this. And then you can take your sitemap, and if you have Google Search Console, you can upload it there so they know where to go each time they crawl. Yes?
Do you have to upload that every time you add a new page?
That's a good question. No, you do not. If it's as long as it's updated, on .com/sitemap XML. If that URL is the same in Search Console, it'll understand, or it'll scan and see what's there currently. If you have a significantly large site, like 1 million pages, you'd need to break down the sitemaps into different. I think like 50,000 URLs is the max per sitemap. And then if we're on WordPress, you may have seen, there's there's like a sitemap for posts or sitemap for pages. So there's different types of sitemaps too. Again, if we're using Yoast, it makes it quite easy to generate. So another technical area of influence is site speed. Google has a free tool called Page Speed Insights, which we should check up to see how our site performs. It gives you a really nice breakdown of each screen, each portion of a second that it takes to load different elements of your site. And many areas, or the major areas of influence to like a slow loading site, images, different scripts like plugins or third-party tools, and then your server itself has a lot of influence, which we'll talk more about. GT Metrics is also a really good resource to check site speed, and I like this tool. There's a free version and a paid version. Even within the free version, it'll list off if there are images that are really large and taking long to load, and you can quite literally just click a button and get a compressed version of that image and use that. So it makes it really easy to update your images. Also, Google Analytics. It's totally free, and there's a good area here in the site speed page timings where you can look at pages individually, or look at see if there's different page types that are slowing your site down. So maybe the blog is a really slow loading area of your site, but the pages are good. Or maybe your portfolio is image heavy, it's weighing it down. It's a quick way to sort of investigate. So as I mentioned, the major culprit from slow page loading is images. So a couple best practices here. We want to crop and resize our images, compress them before we upload them. A lot of times, especially in WordPress, we'll upload an image in the media library, we'll resize it, and then we'll use that in our post. But now we have 2 images on the server, and anytime we resize that, we're adding more and more sort of bloat to that process. There's some tools and plugins that make this easier, as I've listed out here. And then it's always good practice to go back to the media library every so often and delete these old resources or images we may not be using. A couple others, and these are getting a little technical, but there's a good plugin called Auto Optimize for WordPress. Minifying your code essentially is just taking out these unneeded line breaks, and it's compressing the file, making it load quicker. There's also browser caching, which again, there's some good plugins. And if you're on shared hosting, it's fine for smaller websites, but if you have a larger website or a lot of activity, you might want to consider upgrading hosting or using a content delivery network.
Can you
Yeah, no problem.
Let me go over this part again.
This one here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially when a visitor goes to a website, the browser has to talk to the server, get some resources, bring it back to the browser and display it, and then it takes time before you as a user see the site.
Right.
Sometimes for a slow loading site, you'll see sort of this lag, or you'll see something but you won't be able to interact with it. So we want to speed up that process. One way to do it is what's called browser caching, which is basically it'll take certain resources and store it on your browser, so that next time you visit the site, those resources are already there and it'll load much quicker.
So how can I do that for the user though? So that's right.
So you could use a plugin if you have WordPress, or there's different. It gets a little detailed, but there's different ways to basically you can talk to your hosting provider, or if you have a developer, they'll know exactly how to set it up. A lot of the major hosting platforms will help you with this as well. Okay, so we talked about technical, we'll talk a little bit about content, and then if we have time, we'll go through links. So, thank you. So, essentially when we're looking at content, we want to do keyword research, but before we do the actual keyword research, it's important to know who we're targeting. And if you haven't done this as yet, I would strongly recommend building out personas. They're essentially just hypothetical representations of who we're targeting. We want to know, the ins and outs, demographics, psychographics, what sort of pain points they have or challenges they have, because then we can write to those challenges and help, again, take them from point A to point B. HubSpot has a really good tool to create personas. And we also want to take into account user intent. So this marketing funnel, right, where we have top of the funnel is very broad, general. People are just looking for content. Middle of funnel, they're closer to making a buying decision, so our content can be created accordingly. And then finally, like when they're closer to making a decision, different things like pricing, free shipping, return policy, these sorts of things, testimonials come into play. So keyword research, once we have some personas developed and we understand their pain points and challenges, we want to take those concepts and think about how they would search for that. There's a number of paid tools. Ahrefs and Moz are two that we use. There's also some free tools. Google itself, a lot of people sort of skim this over, but if you go to google.com and search for a keyword, you can see what types of results show up. So here we have shopping ads, we have a text ad, we have this featured snippet, and we have this people also ask section. You'll notice no organic results in this screen. So we need to mark up our content to try to get into these cards. People also ask is just an area that Google's added to the search results, showing you related questions, but this is a great area to get a lot of good, useful information. There's a free tool called Answer the Public, which scrapes these questions and gives you either a visual or downloadable resource here, which is really a lot of golden nuggets here. There's also a Chrome browser extension, which is free, called Keywords Everywhere. And again, I can send out a copy of these slides. I'm going to click through a few to make sure we cover some important elements. But essentially with keyword targeting, we want to look at longer tail, longer phrases. Something like shoes is going to be highly competitive. We don't understand the relevance or the intent of the user. But if we have something like, women's white basketball shoes, size 7, we know exactly what they're looking for, and we can target that, and it's more likely to result in a sale. So once we have those keywords, we look at on-page elements. So we're also going to think about our audience. How can we make it quick and easy for them to share this content, to link to it? There's a good resource here called The Perfect Blog Post from Derek Halpern, which I really like his breakdown of how to plan out your content. And then we'll get into some of the major on-page elements. The title tag being the most important in terms of ranking potential. We want to use our target keyword in the title tag. You can see an example here of from Wayfair. So living room furniture obviously is their target keyword. They've added a little, living room furniture you'll love, so it kind of entices you to click through. So we want to use the title tag to try to rank for the term and entice someone to click through on our result versus the competitors. URLs themselves, WordPress makes this easy. We want to avoid ugly URLs like this. We want something informative, short, and ideally using our keyword. The meta description itself, this doesn't influence rankings, but again, it's almost like an advertisement for your result, sort of showing the person that, hey, you're in the right place, we have the information you're looking for. There are also heading tags. The H1 is your main heading tag. You just want one of those on each page. You want a unique H1 tag. But then there's also subheadings like H2, H3, H4. And you can use this to break up your content, to use some synonyms or some secondary terms that you're trying to target. So it'll help not only the user scan through and understand what the content's about, but also help Google understand the pages. So yes.
Tag, you just mean it should be on the page?
I'm sorry?
By tag, you just mean it should be on the page? Or is it like...
Yep, on the page itself. So within the HTML, or if you're in WordPress, you can go to the HTML editor, text editor, and use H2 and then your title and close it out.
It doesn't have to show.
No, it shouldn't show. It should just be, this is how it should display to a user, as we have the example here. But
I'm saying you could just have white text on white background. Google will see it.
You could. That's against Google's terms of service now, actually. So they, smart people like you have done it in the past and sort of try to manipulate rankings. So Google doesn't like when you sort of cloak content or hide content that way. It's actually a big practice in resumes now. Monster and Dice and some of these where people will create a resume and they'll have all these keywords in white text at the bottom, so when the recruiter's searching, the resume will show up, but to the human eye, you don't see anything. So, images are a really important opportunity to use your keywords. The file name itself, so when you're cropping and resizing your image offline before you upload it, name the file something relevant before you upload it. Don't have image123.jpg. There's also alt text, and this helps people with screen readers or people with blind, and it also helps, again, Google understand what the content is about. So there's a couple examples here of we want to get as descriptive as we can, describe what's in the image itself, and if it makes sense without forcing it, use your keyword in there as well. Okay, link building could be a talk in and of itself, but we'll just touch on some of the major points before we break here. So links are super important for a website, but they're probably one of the most difficult things to do. It takes a lot of time and effort, but there are some quick wins. Low-hanging fruit, your social profiles. You should claim all, even if you're not going to be active on these profiles, you should claim them for branding purposes, and so someone doesn't claim them on behalf of you. But then also these are a small signal that can help local listings, review sites, depending on your industry, Yelp or Urban Spoon, different citations. There are free tools like Google Alerts where you can enter like your brand name or your main service or keyword, and you can get email alerts so you know what's happening out there. If someone mentions your brand but they don't link to you, you can reach out, email them, saying, thanks for mentioning us. Could you make it easy for our readers, for your readers to find us by linking to us? And then there's some other more intensive ways to build links. But two I want to briefly touch on is existing relationships. Any vendors, suppliers, partners you have, customers, just ask them for a link. Say, hey, or you can, on the other end, write a review for something you've used. And sometimes they will want to publish that testimonial on their site and link back to you, saying, such and such from XYZ says this about us. Talk to local media, attend events such as this, and continue to network. And then the big one, too, is what we call link-worthy asset creation. So when we're creating content, from the get, we want to think about how can we promote this content. Even before we start writing, how are we going to disseminate this? How are we going to get this in front of our audience? Is this link-worthy? Would somebody link back to my site because this information is so useful? And that's a great place. A great way to approach it.
Sir?
Yeah.
I'm sort of curious, in terms of links, I'm sure there isn't a magic number, but is there sort of a magic number where to get on page one in a competitive environment, you need 50 or
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. My favorite cop-out answer, or the most common answer to SEO question is it depends. There's a lot of influences. It mainly depends on your competitors. So if they have a lot of links, you're going to need a lot of links to sort of level the playing field. That's
how do you know whether they have a lot of links?
there are different tools, like SEO software tools. I don't know if there are any free ones, but there's one called Ahrefs, so it's ahrefs.com. And I forget what the tool is, but they have a free version of backlink checker, I think it might be called, which you can get like a broad overview. Another thing to keep in mind too is that sometimes our direct competitors are not always who we're competing with online. For a lot of topics, a lot of industries, Wikipedia is our #1 competitor because they're showing up for these terms. So that's something also to take into consideration when we're creating content. If Wikipedia, New York Times, all these highly influential sites are ranking, we're probably going to have a really difficult time ranking ourselves. So we might want to choose a different term or take a different approach. So. And this, I know I covered a lot and kind of breezed through most of it, but Thank you for your attention. These are what I hope would be your takeaways, that you really don't need complex analysis to start. Survey your customers, talk to people, pay attention to what language they're using, make note of that, create content that solves their problems. You're going to be ahead of the competition with that alone. And also remember that the algorithms are tweaked to adapt to our behavior. So we don't need to chase the algorithms, we just need to think about the end user, our customer, and do what they need, create what they need. And then don't just do what I say, experiment and see what works. So, thank you.
Let's thank you. Is this the best way to contact you if people have questions?
Yes, thank you. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be around for a little bit too if there are questions, if you have my email, but this is a great place to connect. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, this time we're running a little short on time, trying to get out of here at 1 o'clock to respect everybody's schedules. And so we're going to go around the room. And if you have an ask or want to introduce yourself, try to take 30 seconds if you can and be brief. But we can start on this side of the room.
Mary Rosecki, business consultant here in Ann Arbor.
Bud Gibson, Director, Center for Digital Engagement, Eastern Michigan University. Come to our workshop November 15th. TheDigitalMarketingWorkshop.com with code EARLY. You get it for $50, breakfast, lunch, and a lot of great content.
Can everybody stand up? See you. Thanks.
I'm short. My name is Tracy Juliet. I'm with Lindsay Exhibit Group, and we build and manage trade show and event displays.
Hi, my name is Patricia Dahl. My business is Helping Hand Computer Solutions, and I develop customized training for each person in your office. Most common request, of course, is Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, all of that. And I do targeted training, which is much more efficient than generic training.
Hi, I'm Janet Max. I have my own business. I'm a writer and editor. Anything you need written or edited, I'm your girl. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Amy Ma. I'm in the business for providing the cleaners water and local grid energy.
Hey, I'm Matt Aldrich. I'm the recently elected new president of LA2M, so I just want to thank everybody for coming out and spending lunch with us. There's a few things that I can ask of you guys' help. This is a volunteer organization, so the more you promote what we put out, just share that you've been here, or share our upcoming meeting, or come back next month and bring a friend. That would be really awesome. Thanks for coming.
My name is Mary Boonin, previously Stashak. I work for the RIDE, the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority, and we are currently looking for people to provide input on our long-range plan. And you can find more information at theride.org /transit for tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Samantha Potter. I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator at The Ride, and same thing that Mary said, theride.org /transit for tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Carol Parks, and I have my own marketing firm where I provide copywriting and marketing strategy services for clients. And I help you grow your business with content, website writing, email sequences, all kinds of things in today's content-driven world.
Hi, I'm Becky Ashcraft. I'm the graphic designer at the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. Yes, please go to theride.org /transit for tomorrow and check out our long range plan. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Janelle Reichman. I'm the owner of L&I's, a boutique web design studio based here in Ann Arbor. And I allow heart-centered entrepreneurs to be seen by their audience for who they are and how they help.
Jason Fullabout. I work in Royal Oak, Michigan. We are a web and software development and technology services company. So some of the things Tarun was talking about today, we can certainly help with your websites. We build websites, mobile apps, custom integrations, custom builds for tools you may need to automate your business. So if anyone wants to talk, I can certainly help.
I'm Dr. Andrew, and I own Pivotal Chiropractic here in town, here in Ann Arbor. I'm not like conventional chiropractors that take a pain-based approach with care. I look at a person's spine and body the same way that a structural engineer looks at a building. So we're looking for underlying structural abnormalities in a person's spine that cause a myriad of secondary conditions like headaches and neck pain and back pain and so on. And we put together a very detailed, comprehensive program to correct these problems. And most importantly, give the patient the tools and the know-how to keep those problems corrected so they don't have to rely on me forever and ever and ever. So again, I'm Dr. Andrew, Pivotal Chiropractic.
Hi, I'm Celia Fellon. I'm a yoga studio owner, and I wear a lot of hats at the studio, so one of them is creating our website. But now I realize how little I know.
Leah McChesney with SES Image Group. I left a little flyer in front of you, help you with your branding materials. On behalf of LA2M, if you see one of these cards, or you can grab some at the door to help remind you to come, to pass them out to others that might be interested. You can sign up for our newsletter to be reminded, and also we'd appreciate if you checked in on Facebook or shared about what you liked.
Hi everybody, Derek Maribon. We're in a company called Ingenix Digital Marketing. We help companies looking to grow their marketing.
I'm Ira Carter. I'm a student from Y-High. That's right.
Just follow me around.
My name is Corey Dunn with BDB, Marketing and Web Development, and we help small and medium-sized companies that are struggling to keep up with their production, and also if they're looking for maybe a redesign of their website, we can help them out with that, along with strategy for messaging. Elmo?
My name is Elmo, and I recently find myself doing three things. I screen print t-shirts for corporate groups, schools, and so on. I'm a spinning teacher. My average age of client is 70. And the last thing I do, I'm a ping pong coach. My name is Elmo. I have a little store downtown on Liberty Street called Elmo's Liberty Street T-shirts. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Stacy. I put the LA2M meetings together, so if you know any good speakers on marketing, I could use your help by letting me know who they are, because that's the hardest part, is finding speakers. Derek was shy and didn't tell you that he is the founder of LA2M. So I was glad to see him here today. And I wear lots of hats. I'm also on the board of WXW, Women's Exchange, and at the end of October, we are having an amazing all-day conference with all different kinds of lessons that you can pick and choose which, what would you call them? Workshops. Thank you. Janelle, she's on the board with me. Which workshops you want to go to, and it's just a great day to meet 100 women and do all the workshops and have fun. So check that out. That's women's or WXW
Business.com.
WXW Business. She made the website. Just check it out.
Hi, I'm Katie Stuss from Color Image, and this is my partner Troy. We do large format digital printing, so we do a lot of signage, trade show displays, event signage, and wall graphics.
Stand up, Troy.
Hi, my name's Lach McCabe, President of Sheppard Advisors. We do not do what you all do, but we help your clients, particularly those that have revenues between $5 and $100 million, grow and grow rapidly. So we help them with growth strategies, and basically we don't do the marketing, but we put together the strategy, which then leads to better marketing.
My name's Kelly Bombach. I'm with Sparkle Furry. We do branding and graphic design. We work with clients of all different sizes. We help entrepreneurs get started from the ground up. We work with larger size businesses that are looking to reestablish their brand, develop new messaging, appeal to a particular market. We help guide that message and find those audience members in the right places.
Hello, my name is Leslie McGraw with Let's Go Social, Media Marketing and Training, and I love to help people go from A to B to C to D, as opposed to like, here's A and this, you need to be at Z, and overwhelm them with a whole bunch. I try to take them through the journey and help with social media marketing and community management, and email design and marketing. I'm a certified solutions partner with Constant Contact. So, thank you.
I'm Roger Rayle. I'm a venture catalyst, so I do a lot of videoing of worthy events like this. And also started Ann Arbor Video Interest Group. And next Monday, we have Drew Mason, who is the digital content manager for the Pure Michigan program. So go to a2vig.org to learn about it and to RSVP. It's going to be limited seating, so we not too many more people than why we're here. So, but it's going to be an interesting program, especially with the latest news about the cutbacks in Pure Michigan budgets.
Sorry, what's the website again?
What's the website? A2VIG, Ann Arbor Video Interest Group. Thanks.
Carter?
I'm Carter Sherline, Foxcut Studios. I'm a commercial editorial and portrait photographer, sometimes videographer, drone pilot. But do just about any kind of visual content that you would need for your website, for instance, or any other publicity. And I do shoot a lot of running and golf, so if you're into either of those, you'd probably see me around.
All right. Well, thank you all again for your attendance, and once again, let's thank you, Tarun. Have a great rest of your day.
Nice job, Corey. 1 o'clock on the dot.
That's it.